On a clear, bright morning, the waves along the Pacific coast danced softly beneath the sunlight. The ocean breeze moved gently through the air, carrying with it the crisp smell of salt water. It was the kind of morning that looked calm from a distance, but held unpredictable power beneath the surface. On the deck of a naval training vessel, Marcus, a highly trained Navy SEAL, stood tall in his black wetsuit, watching the waves with a focused gaze. His loyal partner Rex, a strong and alert Belgian Malinois, stood proudly by his side. The two of them had spent years working together. They weren't just a team. They were a bond built through trust, shared missions, and unspoken loyalty. Rex was not an ordinary dog. He had been trained for years to serve on dangerous missions, detecting explosives, locating hidden threats, and following complex orders even in the most chaotic situations. Marcus often said that Rex didn't need words. One look was enough. Over time, the two of them had learned to read each other's signals with silent precision. Marcus could tell when Rex sensed danger, and Rex always trusted Marcus to lead him home. That morning wasn't supposed to be different from any other. It was scheduled as a routine maritime training exercise, something Marcus and Rex had done many times before. The sun was shining, the water seemed manageable, and the crew moved with their usual rhythm. A group of trainees stood on the deck, adjusting their equipment and talking in low voices. The sound of footsteps echoed softly against the metal floor. Somewhere in the background, a seagull called out, as if it too were watching the team prepare. Marcus checked Rex's harness carefully, pulling each strap to make sure it was secure. "You ready, buddy?" he whispered with a calm smile. Rex looked up at him with alert, shining eyes, his tail giving a confident flick. He barked softly, as if to say, "Always." The bond between a SEAL and his canine partner is different from anything else. It isn't built in a day. It grows over years of shared danger, long nights, and moments where survival depends on complete trust. Marcus had been through real missions with Rex, missions where everything could change in a heartbeat. He trusted the dog with his life, and he knew Rex would never let him down. The crew lined up near the edge of the deck, preparing to lower some training equipment into the water. The mission today was simple: simulate a rescue and retrieval drill. Rex's role was to jump into the water, locate a floating target, and return it. Marcus would follow behind, observing and assisting if needed. They had done it many times before. But the ocean, even when it looks peaceful, can change without warning. Just as the drill began, a strong gust of wind swept across the deck. The waves that had seemed calm started to build up, slapping harder against the side of the ship. A loud metallic creak echoed as the vessel shifted slightly. In the middle of these movements, something unexpected happened. The locking clip on Rex's harness, worn down from months of use, snapped open. It was so fast, so subtle, that no one noticed until it was too late. Rex leaned forward instinctively, eager to follow the command he had practiced for years. But instead of a careful, controlled jump, he slipped from the edge of the deck. 1 second, he was standing proudly beside Marcus, and the next, he was gone, swallowed by the cold. Blue waves below. Marcus felt his heart jolt like a spark hitting dry fuel. He ran toward the edge, eyes wide, searching the choppy water. All around him, the deck filled with sudden noise, crew members shouting, boots pounding against the floor, the radio crackling as someone called for the rescue team. In the water, Rex's head appeared for a brief second, his ears flat and eyes wide. He paddled with all his strength, but the current was fast and unkind. The wind pushed the waves against him, pulling him farther from the vessel. Marcus could see the dog struggling, but Rex didn't panic. He kept fighting to stay above the water, trusting that Marcus would come. That trust was unshakable, built through countless moments when Marcus had been there for him. Marcus's mind raced, but his heart was steady. In that moment, He didn't see the equipment, the shouting crew, or the structured training plan. All he saw was his partner in danger. He took one deep breath, not as a soldier following a rule, but as a man protecting a friend. The ocean didn't scare him. Losing Rex did. The crew tried to throw a rope, but Rex was drifting fast. The gap between the dog and the ship was growing wider with every wave. Marcus could hear someone shouting his name behind him, but the noise was fading into the background. His pulse pounded in his ears. In moments like this, instinct takes over. And for Marcus, instinct meant action. Rex had been with him through storms, deserts, and dark nights. They had faced real danger before. There was no world in which Marcus would let him fight the ocean alone. He stepped closer to the rail, feeling the wind whip against his face, and locked his eyes on Rex one last time. The dog looked back, and even through the distance, Marcus could see that silent trust. That was all he needed. He didn't wait for orders. He didn't count the risks. He moved with the kind of speed that comes from love and loyalty. In one swift motion, he ripped off his vest, tightened his boots, and positioned himself at the edge. The cold ocean below didn't matter. Rex mattered all around. The crew kept shouting instructions, radios blaring, but Marcus heard none of it. He was focused, determined, and unshakable. A Navy SEAL's training teaches them to stay calm under pressure, but it was his bond with Rex that gave him strength. The ocean may have seemed endless, but Marcus's heart was already in the water before his body followed. In his mind, there was no hesitation, only purpose. Rex wasn't just a working dog. He was family. And in that single breath before everything changed, Marcus made the choice. He was going in. The waves were no longer gentle. What had started as a calm morning turned into a sudden rush of noise and motion. The water, once shining softly under the sun, now rose and fell in uneven swells. Marcus leaned over the edge of the deck, searching desperately for any sign of Rex. The dog's head appeared between the waves for a second, then vanished again as the current pulled him farther away. The shouts of the crew mixed with the sound of the wind. Everyone was moving fast, but for Marcus, time felt both sharp and slow at the same time. Rex was trained for water exercises. He was strong, agile, and brave. But the ocean had its own power. The waves were pushing against him, spinning him around like a leaf caught in a stream. His legs moved quickly beneath the surface, trying to stay afloat, but the water was rougher than usual. It wasn't just the wind. It was the tide turning, pulling everything away from the ship. Marcus could see the look in Rex's eyes when their gazes met for a heartbeat. There was trust there, deep and unshaken. Rex wasn't crying out or panicking. He was holding on, waiting. The crew threw a life ring toward the dog, but it fell short. Another rope followed, landing only a little closer. The gap between Rex and the ship was increasing. Marcus heard one of the crew members calling something into a radio. His voice rushed and shaky. Rescue boats were being prepared, but every second felt too long. Marcus knew the ocean. He had trained in it, fought against it, and learned its moods. And he could see that Rex did not have time to wait for slow plans. Marcus took a deep breath, the cold air filling his lungs like a sharp reminder. He wasn't thinking about rules anymore. He wasn't thinking about what might happen to him. All he thought about was Rex, the loyal dog who had trusted him in every dangerous place they'd ever been. Then Marcus climbed over the safety rail. His boots gripped the edge of the metal deck. The crew turned toward him, startled. Someone shouted, "Wait!" But Marcus didn't even turn his head. His eyes were fixed on one thing, Rex's small, struggling shape in the water. The drop into the ocean wasn't small, but Marcus jumped without fear. The moment his body hit the water, the cold surrounded him completely, sharp and biting. It shocked his skin, but his mind was focused. He kicked hard, pushing himself upward until his head broke through the surface. The sound of the ship faded behind him. Now there was only the ocean and Rex somewhere ahead. He started swimming with strong, practiced strokes. The waves tried to push him back, but Marcus knew how to move with the water, not against it. Every muscle in his body worked with purpose. The wind slapped water into his face, but he kept his eyes open, blinking through the salt. He could see Rex ahead, just a dark shape bobbing up and down between the swells. "Hold on, buddy," he whispered through his teeth. Though Rex couldn't hear him, behind Marcus, the crew scrambled to support him. Ropes were thrown, rescue boards were prepared, and someone yelled his name again. But Marcus didn't slow down. He had been through tougher waters. What mattered now was reaching Rexstad as he swam closer. The current grew stronger. It was like a hand pulling at his legs, trying to drag him backward. His arms burned, but he kept pushing forward. His mind was steady, focused on each stroke. He thought of all the missions they had done together. He remembered the first time he met Rex, a young, eager dog who ran straight to him as if they were meant to be a team. He remembered the long training nights, the silent bond they built through trust. Those memories gave him strength. Rex saw him too. Even from a distance, the dog's ears perked slightly, and he tried to move toward Marcus. His legs splashed weakly, but the current kept dragging him away. Marcus swam faster, ignoring the sharp sting in his muscles. The waves rolled between them, hiding Rex from view for moments that felt too long. But then Marcus saw him again, just ahead. The dog's breathing was heavy, but his spirit hadn't broken. Marcus pushed harder, closing the last few meters. Finally, his hand touched Rex's wet fur. The dog turned his head, and in that moment, their eyes met. It was a look Marcus would never forget, a look of trust, relief, and loyalty. "Got you," Marcus breathed out, his voice low but steady. He wrapped one arm around Rex's chest and kept the other free to swim. Rex rested his head against Marcus's shoulder, exhausted but calm now that his human was there. The return to the ship wasn't easy. The waves were against them, and every meter felt longer than the last. Marcus adjusted his grip, keeping Rex close but making sure the dog's head stayed above the water. His breathing grew heavy, but his mind stayed clear. He couldn't let fear in. Not now. Behind them, the crew threw a rescue line into the water again. This time, it reached Marcus. He grabbed it firmly, wrapping it around his hand and holding Rex tighter with the other arm. Slowly, with the combined strength of the crew pulling and Marcus swimming, they began to make their way back. The ship didn't look far, but it felt like a mountain to climb. The wind pushed, the water pulled, and yet Marcus never loosened his grip on Rex. The dog's breathing steadied little by little. The fear in his eyes faded, replaced by quiet trust. When they were finally close enough, hands reached down from the deck. The crew carefully pulled Rex out first, wrapping him in a dry blanket. His wet fur stuck to his skin, but his tail gave a small, weak wag when he felt the solid deck beneath him again. Marcus followed a moment later, hauling himself up with the help of the crew. His clothes were soaked, his hair stuck to his forehead, and his arms ached. But when he saw Rex sitting safely on the deck, he let out a breath he hadn't even realized he was holding. The medic crouched down next to Rex, gently checking his breathing. The dog shivered slightly, but was safe. Marcus sat beside him, one hand resting on the dog's back, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. For a moment, everything around them went quiet, just the sound of the ocean fading behind the ship. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a promise kept. Marcus had always known he would protect Rex no matter what, just like Rex had protected him on missions. It wasn't about being a soldier or a hero. It was about loyalty. The crew looked at Marcus with wide eyes, some still catching their breath from the rush. But Marcus didn't need praise or words. All he needed was right there beside him, a tired but safe dog resting his head against his knee. In that quiet moment, Marcus smiled softly. Rex lifted his head slightly and nudged Marcus's arm, as if to say, "I knew you'd come." Marcus whispered, "Always." "Buddy." The ship slowly returned to steady movement, leaving behind the rough patch of water. The sun was still shining, but now it felt warmer, stronger. The stormy waves were behind them, but the memory of that moment would stay in Marcus's heart forever. It was more than just a jump into the water. It was a reminder of what real loyalty looks like, a bond that doesn't break. Even when the ocean rises high, and as the crew cleaned the deck and packed away the ropes, Marcus and Rex sat together, side by side, letting the wind dry their soaked clothes. Nothing needed to be said. The rescue was done, and their bond was stronger than ever. The moment Marcus reached Rex in the water, everything changed. It was no longer just a training exercise. It became a test of courage, loyalty, and trust. As Marcus held Rex close, the strong waves rolled around them, making it feel as if the ocean itself wanted to keep them apart. But Marcus was not the kind of man who gave up when things got hard. He had trained his whole life to stay calm in moments like this. His mind stayed clear, his heart steady. And more than anything, he knew he could not let Rex go. The current was pulling both of them farther away from the ship, making every stroke a struggle. The cold water bit at his skin, but Marcus didn't care. All he cared about was keeping Rex safe. He shifted his arm carefully under the dog's chest so that Rex's head stayed above the surface. The dog was shivering, his fur soaked and heavy, but when his eyes met Marcus's, something powerful passed between them: trust. That trust gave Marcus strength. The wind howled softly over the waves, and water splashed against his face. The ship was behind them now, a little farther than he liked, but still close enough to reach. He could hear the faint shouts of the crew, the sound of ropes hitting the water, and the low hum of the engines. But out here, in the water with Rex, it felt like the world had quieted down to just the rhythm of his breathing and the beating of his heart. "Stay with me, buddy," Marcus whispered under his breath. Though Rex couldn't hear him over the sound of the ocean, Rex was tired. His strong legs had been fighting the current for too long. He rested his head against Marcus's shoulder, his ears back, his breathing heavy but steady. Marcus felt the weight of Rex's body pressing against him, a reminder of how much depended on him in that moment. Marcus kicked his legs harder, pulling both of them slowly forward. Every movement felt heavy, as if the water was trying to hold them down. But he didn't stop. His body was tired, but his spirit was stronger. He thought of all the missions they had completed together. Rex had been there when no one else was. Rex had run through darkness, crossed dangerous fields, and trusted Marcus completely. Now it was Marcus's turn to carry him. The crew had thrown a rescue rope into the water earlier, but the current had carried them past it. Now Marcus had to close the distance himself. He aimed toward the ship's bright orange lifefloat that hung from the side. Step by step, stroke by stroke, he inched closer. The ocean tried to push him back, but Marcus wasn't the type to give in to the push of a wave. Behind him, Rex lifted his head slightly, as if he understood what Marcus was doing. His legs kicked weakly, trying to help, even though he was tired. That small effort made Marcus's chest tighten. He knew Rex wasn't just a dog. He was a partner, fighting alongside him in his own way. As Marcus swam, he started to feel the cold deep in his muscles. His arms felt heavy. His legs burned. But he reminded himself of something he had learned long ago during training. Pain doesn't last forever, but giving up can change everything. He focused on breathing steadily and moving forward. Almost there, he murmured again. The crew on the deck was moving quickly now. They knew Marcus and Rex were close but still fighting against the current. A rescue rope landed closer this time, floating just a few feet away. Marcus adjusted his grip on Rex and reached out with his free arm. His fingers touched the rope, but it slipped away with a wave. He took a deep breath, waited for the right moment, and tried again. This time, his hand grabbed it firmly. He wrapped the rope around his arm tightly, holding Rex close with the other. When the crew felt the pull, they began to haul slowly and steadily, working together to bring both of them in. The distance felt longer than it was. Each pull of the rope was matched by the push of the waves. But they were gaining ground. Marcus could now hear the clear voices of the crew, shouting encouragement, calling his name, counting their pulls. It made him feel less alone. Rex's breathing had steadied now that Marcus was holding him. The dog's tail gave a small, tired wag, as if he knew they were going to make it. Marcus smiled slightly through the cold dot as they got closer to the ship. Hands reached down over the edge. A young sailor, barely in his 20s, stretched out as far as he could. "Almost there," he called out. His voice carried over the wind like a small spark of warmth. Marcus gave one final push with his legs as the crew pulled harder on the rope. Then, finally, they were close enough for two men to lean down and grab Marcus under the arms. Another pair lifted Rex gently, wrapping a dry blanket around the soaked dog. Marcus followed, climbing up the rope ladder, his wet boots thudding against the metal as he reached the deck. The moment his feet touched the solid ground, he let out a long breath, one he had been holding since the moment Rex fell into the water. The crew quickly surrounded them. Some patted Marcus on the shoulder. Others rushed to check on Rex. The dog sat down on the deck, breathing heavily but with calm eyes. When Marcus knelt beside him, Rex rested his head on Marcus's knee, like he always did after a long day. The medic moved in with a towel and checked Rex's breathing carefully. His heartbeat was strong. His temperature was low from the cold water, but nothing that couldn't be fixed with warmth and time. Marcus listened to the medic's calm voice as if the words were music. His partner was safe. That was all that mattered. The captain came forward too, his boots echoing against the deck. He was a serious man, but when he looked at Marcus and Rex, there was a softness in his eyes. "You did well," he said quietly. Marcus simply nodded. He didn't need a speech. For a while, the ship was busy again with movement. Ropes being pulled in, equipment being checked, radios buzzing with updates. But around Marcus and Rex, it felt strangely quiet. He sat down beside his partner, wrapping his arm around the dog's shoulders. Rex's eyes slowly closed as warmth returned to his body. The bond between them had always been strong, but now it was unbreakable. Marcus knew that when Rex looked at him out there in the water, the dog had trusted him completely. And Marcus had kept that trust. The other crew members talked quietly as they watched the two of them sitting together. Some had been in tough situations before. Some had only trained for them. But seeing Marcus dive in for Rex had touched something inside all of them. It wasn't about rank or rules. It was about something deeper. The kind of loyalty that doesn't need words. Marcus gently stroked Rex's damp fur. The dog let out a low, tired sigh, his tail giving a soft wag. It wasn't the loud, playful wag of an excited dog. It was quiet, steady, full of peace. Marcus smiled faintly, his heart still beating fast, but now with relief instead of fear. He leaned close to Rex and whispered, "You're safe now." The sun began to break through the clouds again, warming the deck. The ocean around them sparkled, as if the waves themselves had calmed down after the storm. The crew slowly returned to their duties, but their eyes often drifted back to Marcus and Rex, sitting side by side like two parts of the same soul, thought no one would forget what happened that day. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. It was a moment that showed what trust truly means, a human and a dog. Not just partners, but family. And as the ship moved forward, Leaving behind the rough patch of sea, Marcus knew something deep inside him had changed. It wasn't about bravery or strength. It was about love, loyalty, and the quiet promise they had made to each other long before this day ever came. The deck of the ship slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but for Marcus and Rex, everything felt different. The sound of footsteps, the splash of water hitting the side of the vessel, and the soft hum of the engine blended together into a calm background. It had only been minutes since they had been pulled from the ocean, but to Marcus, it felt like a lifetime had passed. He sat on the cool metal floor, his soaked clothes clinging to his skin, while Rex lay quietly against his leg. Wrapped in a warm blanket, the crew moved around them, some bringing dry towels, others checking the equipment that had gone overboard. But even with all that movement, everyone's eyes drifted back to Marcus and Rex from time to time. There was something about the sight of the man and the dog sitting there, side by side, that made people pause for a second. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet and powerful, the kind of moment that spoke without needing words. Marcus gently rubbed Rex's fur with the towel, careful not to rush. The dog's fur was damp, but warmth was slowly returning to his body. Rex's breathing had steadied. His tail gave a small wag when Marcus whispered softly to him, "We made it, buddy." The words weren't just comfort for Rex. They were for Marcus, too. It was a simple sentence, but it carried everything they had just gone through. The medic crouched beside them with a warm smile. "He's going to be fine," she said gently. "A little tired, a little cold, but nothing serious." Marcus nodded slowly, though his heart still carried the weight of those long minutes in the water. "Thank you," he replied quietly. Rex shifted his head, placing it on Marcus's thigh, like he had done many times before after long training sessions. That simple gesture, the quiet trust of a dog, was enough to ease the last bit of worry in Marcus's chest. The dog wasn't just his partner. He was family. The captain approached next, his tall figure casting a shadow on the deck. He wasn't a man of many words, but when he stopped in front of Marcus, his expression said more than any speech could. "You did something special today," the captain said in a low, steady voice. "Not just as a soldier, but as a human being." Marcus shook his head. "I just did what anyone would do," he said honestly. The captain gave a faint smile. "Not everyone would. That's what makes it special." Then he patted Marcus lightly on the shoulder and stepped away to give them space. Around them, the crew had fallen into a quieter mood. They weren't joking or laughing like before. It wasn't sadness. It was respect. Even the youngest sailors, the ones still new to the sea, looked at Marcus and Rex differently now. They had seen loyalty in its purest form. The sun, which had been hidden behind thick clouds during the rough waves, now shone through with a soft golden light. The deck began to warm. The wind softened, and the water around the ship sparkled again, no longer wild but calm. It felt almost as if the ocean itself had given them a second chance. Marcus carefully stood up, lifting Rex's head gently so he could get to his feet. Rex, though still a little tired, followed him without hesitation. The two of them walked slowly toward a shaded corner of the deck where a blanket had been laid out. The crew had brought a bowl of fresh water and a little food for Rex. It wasn't much, but it was enough to bring him comfort. When Rex lay down on the blanket, he sighed softly, the sound of a dog who had faced something big and was finally at rest. Marcus sat beside him, resting his back against the railing. He stretched his legs and let out a quiet breath. The sun hit his face, warm and soft, and for the first time since the chaos began, his heartbeat slowed to a calm rhythm. The medic returned a few minutes later to check Rex again. She smiled when she saw the dog already more alert, his ears perked slightly and his eyes shining brighter. "He's strong," she said. Marcus chuckled softly, rubbing the top of Rex's head. Yeah, he's the strongest I know. The crew continued their work, but something had changed in the air. There was a sense of unity, a quiet understanding that they had all witnessed something meaningful. They had seen a man leap into a cold, unpredictable ocean, not because he was told to, not because it was his duty, but because his heart told him to protect his partner. Some of the younger crew members whispered softly, sharing their amazement. One of them, a young sailor named James, walked up to Marcus, his hands tucked nervously behind his back. "Sir," he said quietly, "I've never seen anything like that before. The way you just jumped, you didn't even think twice." Marcus looked at him and smiled gently. "When someone you care about is out there, you don't stop to think," he said simply. "You just move." James nodded, his face thoughtful. "I hope I can be that brave one day." "It's not about being brave," Marcus replied, still rubbing Rex's fur. "It's about caring. When you care about someone or something enough, courage finds you." James smiled shyly and stepped back, the words clearly staying with him. Rex lifted his head slightly and let out a soft bark. It wasn't loud or strong, just a small sound that made Marcus laugh quietly. "Yeah, buddy, you're already stealing the show," Marcus said. A few crew members laughed softly too. It wasn't a loud laugh, but a warm one, the kind that spreads without trying. Even after the fear and the rush of the rescue, they found themselves smiling. That was the power of moments like this. As the hours passed, the ship continued its journey, the water smooth and shining like a field of glass. Marcus and Rex stayed close together the entire time. The crew offered them warm drinks, extra blankets, and kind words. Marcus didn't ask for any of it, but he accepted it with quiet gratitude. Rex was already starting to act more like himself, lifting his head, sniffing the air, and wagging his tail slowly. Marcus knew it would take a little time for the tiredness to leave his body completely, but he was strong. He always had been. Marcus leaned his head back against the railing and looked up at the open sky. It stretched wide and endless above them, with the sunlight dancing through the thin clouds. He thought about everything that had happened, the way Rex fell, the way his heart had pounded, the freezing water, and the moment their eyes met out in the waves. That single moment had reminded him why their bond was so strong. It wasn't about commands or training. It wasn't about medals or praise. It was about trust, the kind of trust that doesn't break when things get hard. Rex trusted Marcus with his life, and Marcus had proven once again that he would do anything to keep him safe. Rex shifted closer, resting his head gently on Marcus's leg. The warmth of the dog's body against him was enough to chase away the last bits of cold still clinging to his skin. Marcus rested his hand on Rex's back and closed his eyes for a moment, just breathing. The ocean, once loud and wild, now sounded like a soft lullaby. The captain's voice echoed over the deck as he spoke to the crew about finishing the mission and heading home. But Marcus barely heard it. In that quiet corner of the deck, it was just him and Rex. No rank, no rules. Just two souls who had faced something together and come out stronger. The sun began to lower in the sky, turning everything a soft gold. The light reflected on the water like thousands of tiny stars. The crew moved easily now, their steps lighter. The fear of the earlier moment had turned into a memory they would all carry. Not a heavy one, but a bright one. Marcus gently whispered, "We're going home soon, buddy." Rex's tail gave a soft wag, and his eyes blinked slowly, as if to say, "I know." As the ship glided smoothly over the calm sea, Marcus and Rex stayed together in that quiet spot. The world felt peaceful again. And in that peacefulness, Marcus knew this was a moment he would remember for the rest of his life. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real, honest, and filled with the kind of loyalty that can never be taught. The sky had turned a soft orange by the time the ship neared the shore. The sun was lowering slowly, spreading warm colors across the ocean like paint on a canvas. The gentle sound of the waves brushing against the side of the vessel was steady and calm. Everything about the moment felt peaceful, almost as if the sea itself was trying to make up for what had happened earlier. Marcus sat near the railing, his arm resting lightly on Rex's back. The dog lay curled up beside him, wrapped in a clean, warm blanket. His breathing was deep and steady now, his fur almost dry, and his ears twitched softly every time a breeze brushed by. Rex wasn't just resting. He was safe. He was home, even out here on the water, as long as Marcus was beside him. The crew moved quietly around the deck. Some were finishing their assigned tasks. Others were just standing for a moment, looking at the orange glow of the sunset. But many of them couldn't help glancing toward Marcus and Rex. It wasn't because of fear or worry anymore. It was something else, something warm and quiet. It was respect. Rex lifted his head slowly, looking around at the people nearby. His eyes were alert again, clear and sharp. A few hours ago, he had been fighting against a powerful current. Now, he was looking around like the strong and loyal partner everyone knew. When his gaze found Marcus, his tail gave a soft, slow wag. Marcus smiled down at him and gently scratched behind his ear. "Hey, buddy," he whispered. "You gave us quite a scare today." Rex tilted his head slightly, the way dogs do when they don't fully understand the words but feel the emotion behind them. And he felt it. He always did. The captain walked up quietly, his hands behind his back. He wasn't the kind of man who liked big speeches, but something about the way Marcus and Rex sat together seemed to pull him in. He stopped a few feet away, looking out at the horizon before speaking. "You know," he said slowly, "I've seen a lot of things at sea. But what you did today, Marcus, that's something I won't forget." Marcus looked up at him, but didn't say anything. He didn't need to. "You didn't just save your partner," the captain continued. "You reminded everyone here what loyalty truly looks like. That kind of bond between a man and his canine is something special." Marcus glanced down at Rex and then back at the captain. "He's more than just a partner, sir," Marcus said softly. "He's family." The captain nodded, a small, understanding smile on his face. Then he stepped back, letting them have their moment. As the ship docked, the evening light grew softer. Crew members began to disembark, carrying equipment, securing ropes, and preparing to head back to base. But Marcus stayed still for a moment longer, his hand still resting on Rex's back. This quiet moment between them was something he wanted to hold on to. Rex sat up slowly, stretching his legs and shaking out his fur. Even tired, he stood tall and proud, like he always did. Marcus rose beside him, adjusting his jacket and giving Rex's head a light pat. Together, they walked down the ramp from the ship to the dock. The ground was solid beneath their feet after hours on the water. A small group of base personnel waited nearby, including the medical team ready to check Rex once more. But as they approached, Rex walked with his head high and his tail lifted, showing everyone that he was all right. It was as if he wanted to prove to the world that he was still the same strong partner he had always been. Marcus walked beside him, matching his steady pace. He could feel the pride swelling quietly inside his chest. It wasn't loud or boastful. It was gentle and warm, like a quiet fire. The medic bent down to Rex's level, gently running her hands along his fur to make sure everything was okay. Rex stayed still, trusting her completely. After a few minutes, she looked up at Marcus with a smile. "He's perfect," she said. "Tired, but strong. He'll be just fine." Marcus nodded slowly. "I knew he would be." As they walked further down the dock, the world around them seemed almost different than it had that morning. The salty air was softer, the ocean seemed kinder, and even the people around carried themselves a little differently. Many of them gave Marcus a nod or a pat on the shoulder as he passed. Some gave Rex a gentle scratch behind the ear. None of it was loud. It was quiet respect, the kind that stays in people's hearts. When Marcus reached the end of the dock, he sat down on a bench with Rex at his feet. The sky above them was a beautiful mix of gold and pink now, the last light of day stretching across the horizon. Rex rested his head on Marcus's boot, a simple gesture that carried years of trust. Marcus looked out at the water, remembering the exact moment when he saw Rex fighting the current. That image had burned into his heart, not as a painful memory, but as a reminder of why their bond mattered so much. He had promised himself a long time ago that he would protect Rex just as much as Rex had always protected him. And today, he had kept that promise. Rex shifted slightly and pressed his head a little closer against Marcus's leg. It wasn't just a sign of comfort. It was a silent thank you. Marcus reached down and gently placed his hand on Rex's head. "We did it, buddy," he whispered. "We made it back." The world around them grew quieter as the base settled down for the night. Lights began to flicker on along the dock, glowing softly in the dusk. Seagulls flew overhead, calling out to each other as they disappeared into the distance. Everything felt calm, as if the ocean itself had taken a deep breath and finally exhaled. One by one, crew members left, heading toward their quarters, but Marcus and Rex stayed for a while longer. They didn't need to speak or move. Just sitting there together was enough. When Marcus finally stood, Rex followed him without hesitation. They walked side by side through the base. A few soldiers they passed greeted them with small smiles. Some even called out, "Good job today." Marcus simply nodded back. He wasn't the type to take praise easily. What mattered to him wasn't the attention. What mattered was the dog walking beside him, safe, strong, and loyal as ever. They reached their quarters, a small but comfortable space they shared. Marcus opened the door, and Rex trotted in first, as he always did, tail wagging lightly. The familiar smell of home, clean gear, warm blankets, and Rex's bed, wrapped around them like a soft blanket. Marcus hung up his jacket and sat down on the floor next to Rex's bed. Rex immediately curled up beside him, resting his head on Marcus's leg again. There was no fear left in his eyes, only peace. Marcus smiled softly, rubbing Rex's ear gently. "You're my hero, you know that?" he whispered with a small laugh. Rex let out a quiet sigh, the kind dogs make when they're completely at ease. Outside, the night deepened, but inside, everything felt warm and safe. Marcus leaned his back against the wall. Rex curled at his side. They had been through many missions together, but this one would stay with him forever. Not because of danger, but because of what it reminded him of. It reminded him that loyalty doesn't need words. It's shown through actions. It reminded him that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet and steady, like the moment he jumped into the cold water without a second thought. And it reminded him that love between a person and their dog isn't something small. It's something powerful and real. As Rex drifted to sleep, his breathing slow and even, Marcus closed his eyes too. His heart felt full. The ocean was far behind them now, but the memory of that day would live inside him forever. Not as a frightening moment, but as a story of loyalty, trust, and the kind of bond that can never be broken. In the stillness of the night, with Rex's steady breathing beside him, Marcus whispered one last thing. "I've got you, always." And with that, the two of them rested, not just as a soldier and a canine, but as two souls bound by something unshakable.